Hi,
Hello,
Edith.
sir.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, sir.
That's enthusiastic.
Yes,
Good.
sir. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Matthew. Uh, um, yeah, see, Matthew. I guess Jamie is the one we're looking for here. In DeCalo. I've got the slides that Matthew sent and your evaluation. I took a quick look at it, and also your charter. We'll start with the charter at the beginning here and talk about that. But while we're waiting, did any of you participate in the student webinar meeting last Monday with the
No,
NGO?
sir, I did.
I did not, sir. It was about the merger.
Yeah, right. Uh-huh. And my understanding, there's not going to be any impact on you guys, except that I believe this new school will also be a part of your diploma, and it appears to have some pretty good credentials, and so maybe a good benefit for you as well. But I don't anticipate any issues, and where you guys are and the impacts on that. Uh, did you have any questions or things that you thought about?
No questions, sir. After reading the emails that they've sent and seeing that there will be no impact on
Yeah.
what
Actually,
we're doing at this time, I really
yeah. I've been with the school since about '98, shortly after they actually started teaching. And of course, I was still just getting out of high school at that point, right? But we haven't been through a transition before. And so they had one with faculty, we had a discussion, and then another one's going to be occurring in January. So if anything new comes along, I'll pass it on to you as well.
Sir, if you can
Yeah.
elaborate, I don't think I read down through the email why was the transition or the merger necessary at this time.
Yeah, why they were doing the merger? Yeah, one of the things is that I believe the school that this New England College of Business, they were looking for these capabilities that school had. They wanted to incorporate a course curriculum like what we have here, and also a doctorate's program. And the board of directors thought this may be beneficial to both schools. We bring something that they don't have, and they have some capabilities, particularly around the staff aspect. We have a very slim enrollment folks up at Falmouth. And so they saw this also as an opportunity to reduce some overhead, as well as make use of the online and other staff report, curriculum development type of activities they do, and in a much more efficient way. So, so it was a kind of a business decision, I guess, that seemed to benefit both. These things occur, and hopefully, out of the merger will come, an even stronger course development curriculum, and they have other degrees that will be, that we don't offer. They're a business school, but they also focus in finance, is my understanding as well. So we have some students, kind of interested in other degrees, so it opens up our broader perspective of what we can offer to other marketable students, I guess. So, all right. Okay. No, I don't know, Matthew. Be sure he has the current. Okay. Jay may be using last week's login, so just give a moment to see if he can catch on. The other thing I wanted to address administratively is that evidently this course was designed to launch in November. And I think I even sent an email out. And at that time, the course was set up. And I think as it got transitioned to you, some of the discussion questions got overlaid. Did you guys have, on your side, two different sets of discussion questions, or couldn't access some of them? What was your experience with the DQs this week?
Yes, sir. I had two different questions, and it wouldn't take. It would take the answers from the three responses that I gave from the peer DQs, but not mine. And it had one for Lean Six Sigma, one question for Lean Six Sigma, and then another one for the data collection. So those two different questions.
Okay. Yeah. Because the ones with the Lean Six Sigma and the data collection were the ones that were supposed to be part of this course. Sometimes even the same course, if they have different professors, may have different questions. So, and on my side, I just had those two listed. So I was kind of surprised your experience with that. So I've asked, the NGSIT. So if you respond to either of those questions, any of those that you saw, I will give you credit. Fear not. I'm trying to keep the coursework as low as possible over the holidays. I understand that you got, this is your entire priority. You have nothing else in your life to do over the holidays. But I really want you to focus on your projects and get that done. And so understanding you've got competing things going on over the holidays. So I'm really focusing more on what we're talking about tonight and our next session, which is, I think, is the real meat of this course. So the DQs that are up there, hopefully they got it straightened out for week 2. And because I think there were some dates as well that I noticed that needed to be straightened out. But if you provide a response, I will give you credit. Don't fear on that. Okay.
Sir, I only.
Yeah.
Judith, why don't you go?
I only had one discussion question, and it was the data collection. I never did see one about the Lean Six Sigma. When I would click on discussion question 2, there was no question.
Yeah, I'm
That's
baffled.
exactly what I was about to say, sir.
Yeah, but Judith, you saw 2, right?
Yes, sir. It depends on if you go to coursework or discussion form. Discussion form had one question that was, I think, the collection one, and then when you go into coursework, that's the one that had the Lean Six Sigma question. So it was kind of like confusing.
Yeah,
okay, because my coursework, when I went under coursework for discussion question 1 was the data recollection.
Yeah.
That I was supposed to answer, but when I went to coursework for discussion question 2, there was no question.
Okay.
Yes,
so I didn't
know.
know
Discussion question 2 was empty.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you for helping me understand what you see, because on my side, it looks like both in coursework that the discussion questions are the one around the data collection and Lean. So let me see if I get that straightened out. And then look at the ones we have ahead. We may not have discussion questions 2 for each week either, so let me take a look at that. Any other questions? Not. I want to get started. I don't want to waste the time. You guys are online, the four of you. Do you have any idea about DeCarlo?
I don't have any idea.
Okay.
No, sir. Last I've heard, she was traveling for work. However, it was kind of spotty connectivity, and she pinged us yesterday, I think. But I haven't heard anything since then.
Okay. All right. And it looks like got technical problems here with the A. Okay. Well, let's. I'm going to record this so they can catch up if necessary, and then let me, because I want to spend some time kind of talking about your evaluation. But first, before we do that, I saw Matthew, you sent the charter. Have you actually got reviewed this with the champion? Do you know? Has he actually seen this? And because we don't have the signatures on the charter, we need to get signed charter. And I just typed in names in that. So where do we stand? Do you know if you've seen it? Can you talk to it, or do we need Jamie on the Jay to help us out?
I had thought Lieutenant Colonel Dunson had seen the charter and signed it. I know he signed a piece of paper that we all had signed, because it took us like a couple of weeks or closer to maybe 3 or 4 to get it from him, but we finally got a signature. I can follow up after this class and see if I can find the one that he signed.
Okay.
And I'll check with Matt as well.
Okay. Because usually the procedure is you sign it, you scan it, share it with your fellow classmates, send it to the champion, you sign it, then you send it to me, and I'm the last one to sign it. It's usually a scan-in process, unless you're using digital signatures and PDFs, which some teams use, but typically that's the process. So we need to get all of your signatures along with the champion on the charter on one set of charter, and find that right underneath the signature block. I think in the one in the Word document you had a separate signature. That's fine if you want to do it that way, but or just put it on the front page where you have your signature block. But can we get back to me on that? Because we would like to be sure that we've got the Air Force's, your champion's concurrence with this, and it has to be actually a written signature as opposed to a typed in names. Okay.
Yes, sir. I'll dig for that. I'll dig for that email right after this class, and if I find it, I'll send it to you.
Okay. Right,
yes, sir. I thought it was a foregone conclusion that we had completed that task, because we all had sent it in. Everybody, after signing it, they scanned it in, and Matthew had sent it, or Megan had sent it in, and we got the final copy. So we were not really tracking that it was not properly done. We'll dig into that, sir.
Okay. Yeah, and then we need to get that uploaded to the tracker. Okay. I was trying to switch over to the screen that has your evaluations, which is the assessment you did. So tell me a little bit about the process you went through and what you learned in filling out the individual and then the team process. Did you what did you look? What was how did you go about doing this? And like to get your reaction to what maybe you have learned and what you discussed as you went through the team evaluation sheet.
I can't really give you any feedback for the team evaluation part because I didn't know that everybody was meeting last night to discuss that because it was like a last minute meeting. And I never did get a email or anything. Matt and I have already discussed about that, and so he's adding my personal email because he let me know today that some of his emails were getting blocked from my work. So I don't know if that's how I missed it for last night or when it was discussed they were meeting for last night. So I didn't get to really, I did the team part today with my input, and I sent it back out to the team.
Okay.
Sir, unfortunately, yes, Megan is correct. The information when Matthew sent out the email with the timeline to meet so we could go over the team assignments, some people didn't get it. And so it was just myself, Matthew, and J.E. And pretty much we went over our own evaluations, and then if somebody had a 4, the other 2 had a 3. So we're like, okay, then the consensus will be, okay, we discussed the topic in our answers, and then we went over with and we all decided, okay, then from us talking together, we decided, okay, this will be a 3 or 4. If it's a 3, why it is a 3, and so on and so forth, sir.
Okay. Let's see. We're last night. Then who's in part of that discussion? Megan said you weren't. Was Takalo on?
Yes. No,
Okay.
Takalo was not able to attend either. So it was myself, Jay, and Matthew through text.
Okay. Okay.
Skype.
Yeah. What I would like to do before I talk with you about this, I think it's important, and I know you may have had, sent it in, but really the important part was your own discussion amongst this and where you think you stood, and then, you have those voices into it. And if you're missing a couple of the team members, direct participation, instead of going over this tonight, let's include this maybe in our second mentoring session. I want to have an opportunity in next team meeting for you as a team, all of you, to talk about these things. Now, you may have covered it in 3, but I would also like to get the opinions of the other 2. Even if you've done it by email, it's not quite the same. That's why the consensus process is one of the things that I want you to experience as well, that you agree to and to go through with that. So I'm going to hold off on this until you have an opportunity for everyone else that have a dialogue, at least to trade ideas about it. And then we come back to it, because a couple of things that I picked up on, and like engagement with the sponsor and where they are, like that. Well, I'd like to get an idea, about that tonight. I want to talk about that real quickly. Have you, as a team, been able to brief him? How's the process been? Has it been mainly through Jay?
I think some of the team members have contacted him via phone, and then when I talk to him, it's person to person.
Okay.
I tried to call him one time, but he was out of the office, so I left my number. And then mostly I've been contacting with him through emails. And then when I get those emails, I've been sending those to the team to let them know what he's been saying.
Okay. All right. So has he provided any guidance to you, or has there been any issues that you think that he needs to resolve or know about that perhaps you haven't been able to get to him with?
I don't think so.
All right. So are you comfortable? I mean, I wanted to, be sure that particularly in the areas of whether you're interacting with them is one thing, but also whether you're getting the appropriate guidance that you need to be successful. Because one of the things that you'll have to do This is next time we get together in the last class, Master Business Process 3, is that you'll have to present your findings and get the approval from the champion about your recommendations, and get it in writing, actually. That's part of the school's requirement, that you get concurrence. There may be recommendations you present that he may not concur with. That's fine, but as long as he's reviewed them and sees that the logic and your approach to gather the information is sound and solid. Some champions sometimes say, hey, I'll think this one over. I'm going to implement recommendations 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I'm going to talk with X, Y, Z before I implement whatever that might be. You want to get their feedback. That's going to be a part of that, and you'll have to do the presentation to the champion.
What's going on,
You don't have any surprises at that point, and that's one of the things that I'm really ensuring that you've the opportunity to kind of prep the champion as you go through and be sure they're comfortable with the process and where you headed, and so there's nothing that will come back at the last class and say, hey, I want you to review this or look at this. That's you haven't at this point. Okay.
I know we've presented the PowerPoint presentation to him once already. We were getting ready to do another update, but he would prefer that we wait till after the holidays.
Okay.
So we'll do another update of the presentation then in January.
Yeah, because on the base, most of the commanders and your higher ups, they're gone.
Yeah.
It's the holidays. Everybody's going back home.
Yeah. When I was in service, half-day schedule kicked in about mid-December, and yeah, a lot of folks took time off, so I understand that. Okay. All right. Well, let's come back to that. And as I mentioned, if there's any issues with that. So is there, let me ask you at a very high level, is there any issues that you see that are burning right now that may impede your progress with this MVP?
I don't know. I think maybe the relationship with the vendors. We've got 3 different vendors that control 3 different types of parts that we order on this airplane. Because normally the military controls all the parts. It's in all our stock, but this is a new aircraft. And some of them are still under warranty, so the vendors control all the parts. And it's hard to go in there and tell those guys, because you're talking about GS-12s and GS-13s, how and what to do.
Okay. Now, the vendors, are they contractors?
They're GS.
Oh, okay. So they are actually government employees.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. Does the champion have authority over the vendors? Does the champion have on the vendors?
A little bit. He can, yeah. The ones that we have some that are assigned to our unit, and they're like the middleman between us and like Lockheed Martin, Rolls-Royce, and Downey. Those are the 3.
Okay. All right. Because that's the other thing we talked about really at the very beginning of the scope of the project, that if it's outside of the champion's ability to control, then you should take a look at it and say, what recommendations do I have that if they don't have the influence over that, then typically that's outside the scope of your project. You may additional ones. When we get to the data collection, and I would like to kind of get to the specific issues around that and have clarity about what we were talking about in regards to which parts and how that may be affecting your project. But okay, so noted. Anything else other than perhaps the vendors that you see may be really important factors or something that may cause risk for your project?
I can't think of any offhand. So I was thinking about the supply element, because that's a different unit, but our commander has control over the people that are assigned to us.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah, that's always one of the things then as you start to develop your recommendations is within the scope. And if it's outside the scope, typically what teams do, that at the end, you put a set of recommendations together about other areas to investigate or recommendations for improvement, and maybe outside that, so, you know, as a technique. Okay. Well, let's try to get back into your presentation. Now, you've done a briefing here. What I'm going to ask you as you go through this is that, have you done allocation of who's going to do what part of the briefing yet as a team as we go through your final briefing for this Master Business Process 2? Have you assigned parts of your presentation to amongst yourselves yet?
No, sir, we have not.
We have not, sir.
Yeah, okay. We'll put that on your to-do list. And you're going to have about 30 minutes. And so as you go through and say, okay, which part am I going to take? And what we're going to be looking for when you do this is that this is not a series of short stories in your presentation. In other words, you know, Megan reads a part, Judith gets another part, the colleague gets another part, is that we're looking for integration of that. And for instance, that means when we go through the information that we have in your briefing, let's say your macro flow chart or your SIPOC, you may want to say, okay, this is how this is being used in our data collection, which will be briefed by Matthew in his notes a little bit more completely. So what you're doing now is kind of, you know, integrating this, and so that your presentation flows. What I'm asking you to do, often for a lot of times in the students, brings this kind of together, that this is not a project with separate slides, but rather an integrated product that you have here, that all these items and tools mesh together in order to provide a solution. So do that. Don't spend a lot of time on your admin, like the ground rules. You got a lot of ground rules here. That's important, but it's more important for you than it is for the champion. I'm going to be, you know, looking at being the champion and just listening to you and what you'll be briefing, I'd say, at the final. And I'm going to hold my questions to the end. So when you go through, you know, you have a little bit of information, where the champion will probably know about your squadron, what he does, that type of thing. Here, you know, you cover as you go through briefing on this. Guiding coalition, and what I'm looking for here, again, is that here's the champion. Here, how do you interface with these folks that are on this list? Are they, and I want you to start using some of the quality tools as well. Are these people that need to be consulted before a decision is made? You know, if you go back to project management, you know, are the guiding coalition, how have you interfaced with them? How do they review your recommendations? Do you run your recommendations for improvement by them, or they provide you subject matter expertise? And or if you can think about, then, you know, how do you use the guiding coalition? Is the guiding coalition, is this the sole decision maker? Those type of things. So you talk about their roles in addition to how you interface with them. Just don't recite their names. That's what I'm looking for. Really, is your as a team, how you interact and how you developed and what you thought about each one of these slides as you go through. Here's the alignment. That's fine. I'm not going to talk much about that tonight. But basically, what you do when you're briefing, be sure you just get to the key points. Don't read the slides. Don't read the verbiage on it. What's the takeaway? If you're to look at the organizational strategic priorities and goals, okay, what would you say in a nutshell how your project impacts what this organization does? What would you say are the key things? And when you kind of summarize, then, hey, they have readiness ratings, you know, we're working to improve this. This is a very important item, whatever that might be. But you kind of condense the slide. Don't read the bullets. Don't read everything on it. But you take what I call the takeaways that you want from each one of these. And so you kind of practice that you know what you want to say in this. Okay, here's a line with the strategic goals again. Okay, got a lot of that. Okay. Where do you have, what phase are you in at this point? of the DMAIC model? You guys know?
I think we're still in the analyze phase.
Okay. Yeah. Which what you want to do, what's missing from this slide deck that you need to put in here. Okay. You got an intro. You tell who you are. You talk about a little bit about the, these other things important, but there's a couple of slides that are missing. One of the things that's missing, remember we talked about, you need to have the DMAIC model in here. You need to be able to talk to that this is the methodology that you as a team have been using and are using for your MVP. And then so you need a model in here. You need to have that where you can talk to each one of those steps. So whoever's briefing the first part of this, as you're giving the background information, be sure you include, as you go through this is the methodology we use, DMAIC, define, measure, analyze, and improve. Now, let's see. This is the slide that I put in your slide deck, and it has a sequence to it, okay? Team introductions, project champion information, okay? You see ground rules in there? Nope. DMAIC model, yep. Okay, you got that, alignment, okay? And the reason that you want to have this is that there's a sequence to it as well. It doesn't have to have it exactly this, but this kind of flows according to using the DMAIC model. So you need to have that in there. You need to explain what the DMAIC is, what's the background, what the steps, and then associate on your slides, or at least put a slide header in there between. Okay, now we're talking about the measure phase. And a good technique is either put right on the slide, that this is part of the define, this is measure, and that type of thing. So you need to add that into your briefing, okay? Okay, and strategic priorities and goals, then you got your, okay. What would you say around the force field analysis? Get any ideas? What's the purpose of force field analysis? What you do, whenever you get to a tool like force field analysis, macro flow chart, problem statement, first thing you do is what? Describe the tool. How is it used? So we know that from the school's perspective that you understand the concepts that are in behind the tool as well as what's on the slide. So what's the purpose of force field analysis? Anybody want to kind of chip in maybe with your own words?
This is kind of like your pros and cons, the support and then the whatever problems or hurdles you might anticipate. And of course, in the middle of that, you've got what the project is about.
Okay. Anybody else add anything? Force field analysis, yeah, it has the pros and cons. It'll tell you, why this may be a good benefit, maybe the things that you may encounter in the organization that would put it at risk or be challenging to assess. In project management terms, this is really a risk assessment. Even though for your MVP, we call it force field analysis, but it has a real analogy to a risk assessment where you're looking at and saying, what are the things that are going to enhance our project? What are the forces, the reasons for it? And the restraining things might be the obstacles, the challenges, and then typically you would have in projects what we call mitigation activities. In other words, for all the things that may be challenges or impacting our project, then we would have in there a strategy to deal with them. So if you've got a problem with your vendors, for instance, or if you've got a problem with XYZ, or getting with the champion or whatever that might be, or any of the things you may have rated a 2, you may want to include that in your project at this point. Keep in mind, this is not just a project for NGS, but for you to think about anything you do in life, really, that has to do with the project. Is saying, what's the risk? What's the things? Hey, even your Christmas shopping, right? That's a project. What would put that thing at risk? Well, lack of money, overdrawn credit card, don't know what what they want, and at a time. Well, those things are all risk, right? And then you probably will think about, well, maybe I have my mitigation strategy is I'll make something, and or I'll ask them for a list by this. So this applies not only to NGS, but that's kind of the reason we have it up front is for you to think about that. And so when you brief this, again, what's the purpose, and then how are you using it? And risk assessment and force field analysis should be living documents. So you as a team think about it and think about what you need to do to ensure you're on track. So that would be a type of thing. Okay, now, all right. And we're still in what phase of DMAIC at this point?
Analyze.
Okay, the big define. All right. Any changes to the problem statement since I've been with you last? Looks like you added a lot of verbiage here. All right. Let's back up, okay? Somebody else. What's the purpose of the problem statement?
To tell what the problem is.
Okay, tell you what the problem is, yeah. Absolutely right, can't argue with
that. The problem statement, well.
That's what the problem is, okay. All right.
Anybody else got a short reference?
I think, from my point of view, I think it states what the problem is and how it's impacting the organization.
Right. You tell them what the business case is, right? Your problem statement defines the focus of your project. It is something that enables you to establish, and quantify. You remember, you have to have quantifiable information here about what the problem looks like, whether it's amount of readiness rate that's being missed or the reduction in not meeting targets and goals. So in addition to talking to the problem, remember there's a characteristic of a problem statement. So yes, you go through, here's the problem statement, this is the focus for your project. Talk a little bit about how that maybe has been refined or the struggles, because in addition to talking about what the problem statement and each of these tools is about, what I'd like for you to do is also talk a little bit about your learning that you have done. Hey, when we were writing this, it was challenged, we learned about this. This has been going on for X amount of time. What we discovered then, as we wrote this, I'm also interested in what you learned as a team. You probably won't have much of that, but it's good to interweave if you can think about things you maybe have learned as a team in here. So I want you to brief each other again. Keep in mind, before you get back with me with the next briefing, I want you to practice on each other and saying, what are the key points I'm going to say from this? Don't read the problem statement too much on there. Talk about what the purpose of a problem statement, go back to your materials, review that, take a look at that, refresh it. And this is also something that really, starts discussing how you will be using this later on in your project. Okay, here's our problem statement, and you referred to it in our data collection. We used it when we looking at our analysis. We ran through our analysis tree to see whether this was in scope of our problem statement, things like that. So talk about how it can be used, and then a little bit about the important part that's in here. Cost and time and quantitative measures, highlight those in your briefing. SIPOC, same thing. Okay. This is the high-level view, 50,000 view project of this. It shows all the key things. Are your vendors here, Jay, on your supplier list that you talked about?
No, I don't see them on there.
Okay.
No, they're not on there.
Okay. All right. So the ones that you talked about, if you're out of scope, in other words, if they're not on the list, because part of what you're doing in Define, right, is not only saying, here's the problem statement, here are the requirements we got to deliver on, here's the things that we developed in conjunction with the champion. The problem statement is something that documents what you're the focus of your project in. It would be in a project management sense, a charter. Typically, the problem statement is saying, here's what we're going to deliver or produce. And then the SIPOC is a part of scope. Okay, remember we talk about that as well. Shows who's involved and who's not involved. Here are the key customers. So you brief it at a high level, okay, and you can leave it like this okay, but sometimes some of the teams find it easy when they say, okay, here's our SIPOC, here's our high level, here's our key elements. We found as we went through, we made some adjustments. When we started getting into this, there's other key suppliers that didn't have listed, so we added to it. That's talking about the journey a bit. And then say, here's the customers. What do they need out of this process? What are their requirements? And sometimes that's a really good lead in to the customer requirements matrix, right? Here's your customers, and then what do they want? So think about sequencing as well, that you're in some teams just find putting those two together in sequence makes sense. But I'm not going to dictate your sequence. You talk and brief it what makes good sense to you, but it should be logical in its flow. Okay, does that make sense to you?
Sure. But stand corrected, on the SIPOC, we do have the vendors, they were on the bottom.
Okay, got it. Okay, good. All right. Okay. High level, what's the purpose of the process map, macro, at this point?
It just gives you a general idea of the flow of the process.
All right. To map the process, right?
Sure.
Yeah. What's this other purpose at this point? Let's see. Matthew, you can chip in with a chat. I'll be glad to read your comments. Purpose of the process map, macro, this level and define. How soon we forget, huh? Right. How about using words like scope, right? Here's our start point, here's the end point. Because the current process map, in addition to at a very high level showing the major steps in it, you're also saying, here's who's included, here's where our start point and our end points are. We looked at things inside this process, these steps, okay? And what you're now doing is focusing your audience and say, okay, our project is not looking at, we're looking at aircraft maintenance, for corrective maintenance, for preventive maintenance, but rather corrective maintenance. Here's the start point, who's involved, here's the endpoints of that. So remember that your process map at this point, in addition to showing the high level flow of this, you also want to say, this is what's included in our project, what was excluded. As we went through the process and we kept looking at that and being sure. Now, this is a more detailed flow map, and here, are the colors on here to mean anything? They're kind of Christmassy. You got kind of some red and greens going on. Do they have any other value for you here? Is there a reason you have yellows and reds and greens? Don't know?
No, I can see that like the yellow or mustard, the exclusion, and we had the green inclusion.
Okay. Okay. All right. This is a good briefing technique. Okay. When you orient and you do a briefing, again, you're selling your product, right? Okay. And one of the things you can do, and more effectively, to see what's excluded from our project, exclusion and inclusion, that's scope. Whoever's briefing that, be sure you use words like that. You can see by the yellow, right? These are the things that are excluded from the scope of our project. That would be perfect, okay? If the colors have significance, then you want to say, okay, these are things that are included, there's that. And you may even, you know, if you start to look at, and then say, as we started to collect data, we use this to, as a basis for what points in the process we collect data. We'll show you that data later in our data collection plan. That'll be briefed by whoever. So whoever's briefing this will also maybe talk a little bit about what's on the chart, and then maybe how it's used later on in the project. That would be the type of thing we're looking for, yeah, again. Okay. All right. You got your stakeholder register. This is from your project management. Okay. And here, what you really want to do is, you know, say, what's the purpose of a stakeholder register? You have to go back and summarize that. You know, but basically it lays out the roles and responsibilities, and you've got your folks laid out in the champion. You know, as you can talk about it here. When you did your champion introductions, just later on, we'll show you the specific roles and how we communicate with each one of these champions, and it'll be on our stakeholder register. Okay, so you can either explain it at the beginning, you know, here's how we used them and what their roles were and how we communicated, or you can wait till you get to this chart and discuss it a little bit further, which may make sense. Okay, and that as you go through that discussion. Okay, CRM, be sure you cover who the customers are and their requirements, and how you're using this, and how your requirements later on in your project, when you get your recommendations, you should go back and say, how will this, you know, achieve these expectations as well? Okay. What's another key takeaway on this chart, folks, do you think? Okay, what's most important to the customer? You got a rating on here, okay? Okay, if this is the most important part, you want to be sure that when you start to develop your recommendations, that they deliver on the most important aspects of your customer's requirements. So this is how you start to operationalize this in saying, okay, we're going to review that when we get our recommendations. So types of things. I'll just kind of go through and give you some tips on this, and also, you know, how we're kind of looking for what we're looking for this. Now, what phase are we in here, and what phase are we in here? In the DMAIC. You got 5 choices. You want to take a wild guess? D, M, A, I, C. What do you think? Oh, looks like we lost Judith. Okay. Your data collection plan. What phase in the DMAIC is that? Some of you may be talking while you're muted, perhaps. Okay. This is going to be important for you.
Well, with the data, we're wanting to analyze it.
Okay.
No,
Need to have, again, is to get to agreement on this. This is typically the beginning of your measure phase. Because what you're doing in the measure phase, and what you want to explain in your measure phase, is this is where you collect the current state of your project. You collect data around how it currently is operating, and you develop a data collection plan based on qualitative and quantitative information that you want to collect. And this then guided to you your data collection that you did, and it shows the time frame that was collected, which appears to be completed in October. Okay, and so this is your measure phase. All right. And then operational definitions, which are, you explain what's the reason. So be sure you know what these things are, operational definitions, and explain that, whoever's briefing this. And then what's now this becomes your header. This becomes, here's the data we collected, right? Production slides, group slides, parts order, survey data that says in here. And then Rich, you should show, for instance, then, what's the data that you had, okay, collected based on this plan. And here, you've got, here's the things we collected, operational definitions. These are the things we had to define because they were defined differently within the organization. We had to define them so we could measure them. These are the things we came up with. And then let me show you the data that we collected, okay? And then how we started. How did you collect, how did you do this fishbone diagram? How was the information collected that you used to develop this?
I guess that would be on me. I went around to each unit or whoever, like maintainers. I talked to the maintainers, COSOs, which is another word for the supply, and warehouses. I just went around and talked to them, asked them questions.
Okay. All right. Now, that's good. What part of that does that relate to this plan? Probably you need another entry here. Conducted interviews, right? You did one-on-one interviews with the various members of the organization. You collected the information, and then you put it into the fishbone diagram, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Give yourself credit for what you did. All right. So that's what you talk about. Okay. Now, are any of these on here higher value than some of the others? Now, when you talked to them, was there a feeling or recommendation that these contributing factors, while you're not meeting these aircraft readiness rates, are they more important than the others?
I don't know. I never thought about it that way.
Okay. Well, think about it. Typically here, because remember what you're doing here, you're collecting data, but also not all data is created equal. You know, there are maybe things that are more contributing to root causes, to problems that you have than others. So if there's anything on here that you think are perhaps, you know, impacting customer satisfaction or reasons that are than the others, a good technique is just to color code them or put a cloud burst over something like that. So you're highlighting not only what you've done in here, because you've got a good fishbone diagram, but also then say, okay, we started to look at these, and there are areas here that are contributing to this, and then we further investigated those things which were, you know, what we thought were high value, kind of look at root causes that were impacting these are probably more important than the others. Because what you want to do is you're developing the causes that are relating to non-mission capable aircraft parts, right? And which ones are, you know, directly maybe most impactful on your project. So something like that typically is get briefed in this. Okay. Your Pareto. Same thing. I'm not going to go through, you know, the key points in each one of these. This is something you guys need to do to refresh yourself. Maybe you have to go back to some of the classes and pull out some of the key points that we talked about on that. But basically then, what's the purpose of the Pareto? And then how you would, you know, identify the tall poles, what are the key things that you want to focus in on. Be sure to discuss, you know, how this is arrayed, why the data is, and what this means, okay? You know, where is your 80% mark? And then what falls underneath that? And then how did you use the Pareto? This is hypothetical, right? Do you have anything that's not hypothetical on your Pareto at this point? In other words, actual data?
I don't think so. I'd have to go back and look at that.
Okay. All right. So if we can come up with, for instance, most frequent parts missing impacting, repair or something like that. Were you able to look at stuff like that? Which parts perhaps, what's the biggest cause? Let me ask you that. What's the biggest cause of not having the parts on hand?
The vendors have control over all the parts.
Okay, they don't have control. Okay.
I mean,
Right.
What's up?
Yeah, go ahead.
If we have an aircraft that's broke and another base has an aircraft that's broke, because the vendors control the parts, they pit it up for bidding, which base wants to pay the most for it. That's how they've been doing it. But I'm thinking we're getting away from that because that problem's been channeled up to higher headquarters. But
Okay.
like I said, it's just the vendors. They have so much control over the parts.
Now, is it all parts or just is there a particular category of parts?
Not all parts, but it's well, it seems like to be the parts that keep breaking all the time.
Okay. All right. Now, see, that's something that typically is a pretty good Pareto. You start to say of all the parts that are contributing to our non-mission capable time are missing or not available, right, which is where I think you started with. You can say, okay, here's the ones that are controlled by these vendors. These are the ones that are, controlled by these folks. Or maybe they're high dollar items, and of all the ones that were missing or slowing things down, it was those that cost $10,000 to $20,000, whatever that might be. So that's one way to use a Pareto from hypothetical to actual. Start to think about of all the parts out there, which ones cause the most delay, are the biggest problem child. Because if there are parts controlled other than the vendors you're talking about, maybe you could categorize that and say, okay, of all the non-mission capable time, which one contributes the most to it. Just a thought. But it would be good if you could go from hypothetical to some type of actual data so that you can, farm that as a team into that. So think about that, guys. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Stakeholder register. It looks a lot like this one. Okay. Got two of them in there. Get rid of it. Okay. So this is colorful. Okay. Did you get? How much did you get out of your lean course? What was some of the key takeaways, guys? Just let me give me your impression about the lean course that you had, and what were some of the key takeaways you had, and whether you thought it was applicable to your project or not. I may have been talking away from the camera. Matthew, I just asked about the lean course. What were some of your opinion as a team about what you learned in that course and value to your master business process here? I'm interested in getting your feedback on that. All of you as a team.
Well, I think for me, when you talk about the lean course, it helped me to focus on what was directly impacting the problem, because we had a lot of data and a lot of information, and you just cut that fat away. That's how I would say it. And then you have a focus of what you want to analyze or measure.
Okay. Is this hypothetical or is this actual, what you got on here?
That's actual.
Okay. All right. And, okay. Any other comments about the lean course?
I agree with Jay. Like for me, going through the lean class, I was able to see how some of the processes we have at our plant can cause some waste that maybe we can eliminate in the future. Right now it's kind of hard for us because we don't really have like a certain person that's focused on Lean/Six Sigma. So hopefully after completing this master's course, like hopefully I can take some of those techniques back and be able to apply of how we could eliminate some of the waste that we have to save time.
Okay. We're in the... Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry. And learning about like the bottle checks was like, that was new to me. So being able to learn about that, because I didn't know about that. Like some of the terminology we learned in the Lean class was beneficial because I didn't know what it was.
Okay, fair enough. I find I get a lot of mileage actually out of a lot of the Lean concepts. You know, just the theory of the bottlenecks, identifying the slowest element within that, and then focusing in on that. Looking at the categories of waste. Okay. Let me see what you got next. Theory of constraints. Okay. Where's create a buffer? Okay. Okay, so you got that. Yeah, sometimes what teams do is just list the various categories of waste and saying, here's what we found. Over transportation, there's too much travel. They have to go from this part to this part to pick things up, adding time. The ordering process is over complicated with too many approvals, takes too much time. You know, wherever that might be, sometimes that's a pretty good way to categorize data. And the Lean, then whoever briefs this, be sure you kind of say, here's the purpose of the value stream map, and then talk to the data that you have in here. And it looks like, what's your target to try to improve non-value added? You got non-value added steps up to 18 days. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Wow. Where's that located in here?
And it's just a combination of all the entire process.
Because this often is a very good thing to say, okay, we have a target. Okay, here's how much non-value added time we have in here. This is what's causing delays. You may say the vendors may be holding on to this, but why are they holding on to it? Are they maybe not releasing it? What are their issues? Is it around travel? Is it around cost? Is it around misordering? Is it because of, do you have any idea what the issue is around the vendors and why aren't they being able to get the parts at the time they need it?
Money and poor planning. A lot of the parts, I guess they wouldn't anticipating the aircraft to break as much or as soon as it did because it's a brand new aircraft, and had to order parts that they hadn't even made yet.
Okay, so there's no demand on it, right? In other words, there's no stock level.
Yeah.
And that's added then a long time for your ordering process, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So these are new aircraft, but they're breaking outside of their normal maintenance schedule, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. All right. So you got a brand new process, okay, that has got kind of a curve to it. In other words, a learning curve, right?
Yes, sir.
They didn't know what parts are going to be needed until they start breaking, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, got it. And see, that's part of your root causes is that, you know, you got a new system, there's no historical background on it, but you're starting to say, okay, where is the longest of the things it does? How long does it take to identify that? Is it a problem that they need to get additional funding that had not been pre-programmed, so you got maybe budgeteers or something like that involved with that? I don't know. But you know, why is it taking so long after they do identify it to get it in your hands, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Theory of constraints. Let's see what we got here. All right, so these are some recommendations around theory of constraints. Future state. All right, now before you do your future state, which is what you did out of your lean course, right? Identify these are key areas to improve. Was that what the Kaizen bursts are up here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, and that's kind of where you are at this point, right? You're developed that. Now these will become then your recommendation areas to improve based on your lean, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, got it. All right. Now, did you guys do any benchmarking?
Not really.
You didn't get anything from your benchmarking, secondary or?
I did. I got from the class. I did, but I don't think we put anything in our presentation here.
Yeah. What did you guys find through your secondary research or your primary research something that you can apply to the master business process?
I did.
Okay.
We have
the
C-130. We have the new version, and some of the reserves and Coast Guards, they have an older version. And they were talking, when I talked with them, that they have an aircraft that's basically a can bird, is what they call it. So when parts break, they just take it off of this aircraft. It's an aircraft that doesn't fly.
Okay. And you talked to them?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that's you tee that up and put that in your slides. Here's who you talk to, primary, because you talked to them directly, right?
Yes, sir.
Primary or secondary benchmarking? Which one is that? Primary. When you go talk, secondary benchmarking is the article research, writing up whatever you found that's published. But if you talk to another organization and interview them, created information, that's primary. So you would have a chart in here that says what we did for primary research. If you talk to another unit, talk about what you found out, maybe best practices or something you may be able to adapt, like using a canned bird or something similar. What you found, and even see if it's viable in your case. Did you guys get things from your secondary research where you went online and said, okay, how can we improve parts, maybe new, anything in there? If you had any of that, then you put that under secondary research. Here's what we found from that. Say, okay, here's what we talked to or the article, and then we have that. So what you have in there then is where you got the information from, basically primary, secondary, and what you found from it, what's the value of it. So you want to be sure you got some slides in your here. Okay. And do you have any other emerging recommendations at this point, guys?
I don't.
For the benchmarking slide, should we put that closer to the beginning of the presentation or after the future state map?
Yeah, here's where it probably should come in. If you follow the sequence of this, right? Because what you do in the measure phase, you're talking about the as-is state. What currently things are, how things operate. When you start to do your root cause analysis, which is usually around when you do your, this part here, and what do we find out here for recommendations? And part of that is that, hey, we did analysis using value stream map, okay? Here's our recommendations for improvement. Because whenever you start getting the recommendations for improvement, benchmarking is going to be a part of that. Because typically you said, okay, we went out, analyzed somebody else's processes, or we looked at another article, and then we determined out of that, we did some analysis, which was a great value to us. And then we included that as part of our recommendations, okay? And so when you have your recommendations that include a future state, like here's what we recommend to improve based on reducing the waste categories from value. Here's what we found by talking to benchmarking. You consolidate all that stuff into, here's a consolidated set of recommendations. Here's things what we got, about how to improve the process that, based on this fishbone diagram, here's the areas we thought, we can improve and recommendations based on that, and then you add that into the mix. You're going to have some additional recommendations coming out of your financial class too. Will be in there. You'll have, how to decrease costs and things like that. So typically benchmarking is right at the analysis phase. Okay. And the improve phase usually is right after that. It's sometimes, you say, here's what our analysis, and here's our recommendations we got from that analysis. So that's where that would be. Okay. And right here is your recommendations for improvement. And then I want to talk a little bit about that when we get together next class, because we're kind of running at the hour plus mark, but I will talk about the pilot. But we basically kind of walk through this and talk about some of the key points that would be anticipated that you guys do for each one of these. And you need to add that. You need to add, let's see, the DMAIC into your process right now. And then you got to go back. Anything that now, did you do a survey like you have advertised on your data collection plan?
We did.
Okay. All right. You got your survey. Is that back? Is that done? Is that completed?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So you put in there your survey data. Give yourself credit for that. Say, here's the survey. You may want to show the questions, who you administered to, and what did you learn from it? What were the findings? You put that in there. Did you do? How about this other stuff? Looking at the late parts and all that. Do you have data on that?
Yes, sir.
Is that in here already?
Well, it's not in the slideshow.
Okay. Need to add. Okay, if you already collected data and you got some charts and darts put together, I want you to focus in on that. And that's really our purpose tonight. One is to kind of go through about the briefing, the technique about that, but also to really kind of highlight the areas where you may already have data, things that you already have done and maybe need to include in here. So you get some time really kind of thinking about that, fleshing this out, because this is really the meat of your recommendations. The heavy part of your project, where you want to spend most time, is talking about what you did in your value stream map, the things you got from the survey, talking about the data you have, and the analysis about recommendations for improvement. Because this stuff up here, about scope, and that's good, that's important. But the meat of this is really around your recommendations and what you're going to do to improve, because that's going to be the primary thing you're going to have to convince the champion of. And you really need to consolidate that. So I really would recommend, if I were to provide a recommendation to you, really focus in on that, that you as a team bring the data together, add the charts, add this, and you're going to have to get together and probably practice this briefing amongst yourself and saying, what are we going to cover? And listen to yourself some time. And Matthew, you'll probably put into your notes, into the slides about what you're going to cover. What are the key things? So you would write out your portion in the notes, and so as we get to that, review that, we'll read that, and then we'll continue on. But your presentation then will be in the written form and be inclusive. So it may be worthwhile then also, as I mentioned, this to set up who's going to be briefing what, because every member of the team will have a portion of this when we get back together for the briefing. And if you're not quite there, we may not get a go on this. So I want you to practice that. Now I know here we are in the holidays, and that's why I really want you to focus on working on this presentation, getting the data, because once you flush this out, your comfort level is going to go up a lot, and you'll give yourself some time. I want you to spend that here over the time we have before we get back together. And so once you have that about right, and you practice it, and you've gone through this, you may have questions. If you want to get together with me again and have another kind of walkthrough, and if you have questions that you would like to run by me before you do the actually in brief for this, be glad to do that. If not, let's look at, after you got that process down, gone through this, really improve this, get your charter done. That's probably the most important thing. Get the signatures on one document and send it to me so you can get the signed document into the portal, to the tracker. That's where I would recommend you spend your emphasis at this point, and policing that up. That's primarily the things I have for you tonight. What questions do you guys have?
I don't have any right now, but I'm pretty sure later on I will.
Megan, how about yourself?
I had one question, and I might have heard it wrong. Do we need to add like the DMAIC to the top of the slide? So, like, say we started the define stage, do we need to put that at the beginning of one of the slides, or no?
Yeah, there's two ways to do it, and I will probably say more teams I've seen, the way they do it, they put a slide with that DMAIC model at the very beginning, because you're talking about the methodology, right? And then what they do is that on the top of each slide, and get rid of the ones that are not required, if you don't want to spend any time other than talking to the real important ones, is that put on the top of the slide, like this is defined, or you sometimes what some people will do, they'll get color code. They got one symbol of the DMAIC, but they color code the D when they're talking about define, and when they transition into the measure, they'll highlight the M on the measure or the DMAIC. So there's a lot of times you can put it right on the chart. The other way is then you would put, for instance, a slide before your measure phase, this one here, a slide in here right before it, between that and the customer matrix, and say, okay, this is now we're going to be talking about the measure phase. We're going to cover the as-is state. We'll give you the data we've collected based on the unnecessary to solve our problem statement. And then you cover that, and then you transition with another slide when you go to analysis and that. So that's the other technique. You can do it by a slide, or you put on both, or you can use both the slides and little headers on each one of the slides themselves.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir, it did.
Matthew, you got any questions? Okay. And it looks like we've lost Judith. I am recording this one. I'll send it over to NGS, so it'll be sent out and transcribed for you. And for those that DeCarlo that missed this, she needs to really review it. So before we're going to have to add a little bit in here, because I really would like all of you as a team to do this evaluation and have that discussion, because between now and the end, your teamwork is going to be very important, because things kind of accelerate towards the end. I'll just tell you that. A lot of the things you come together usually kind of come together quickly. You don't have a lot of time between now and the end of February and March when we come to the last class. So there's a lot to kind of pull together, and so it's important that you have good team dynamics and that you establish workload, and everybody kind of has anticipated portions of this. Because when you do the briefing, often what you do for this course will be very similar to your last course, except you have some additional charts. So this is kind of a dress rehearsal. If you don't do well with this, you're going to struggle in your final set of requirements for this degree program. So let's get you up into success factor for that, and then let me know when you're ready. We'll reschedule the second either the mentoring session for the final review. You're going through the entire thing, or if you want to have an interim session before the last one, I'll be willing to do that too. So, all right. Let me see. Got anything back from Patrick? Okay. Well, if there's not any other questions, that's all I had for you. And I don't think we're going to see you before Christmas. So I want to say Merry Christmas to each one of you, and hope you have a great holidays. I know having this course in the middle kind of puts a damper on things, but I do hope that you have a time off and that you enjoy it. And if you got any questions, let me know.
Will do. Happy holidays and good night.
Okay.
Merry
Night.
Christmas, sir, and good night.